second notice is in regard to our event next week, which is held at our normal lunchtime meeting at Wednesday. And that, of course, is our annual footy lunch, which is a big day on our annual calendar. So join us next week as we host father-daughter AFL broadcasters, Sam and Tim Lane. And why not bring along your partner, your family, and dress in your club colours? Although Mary's already dressed in her black and white club colours tonight. So let's see if our Collingwood supporters are just as happy next week. But we will have the AFL 2021 Premiership Cup on display. Our Melbourne fans have been able to organise that for us. So it'll provide a special opportunity for those in attendance to have a memorable photo. Bookings, as always, via our website. And with that, that's it from me. And I hand over the meeting to our chairman, Stephen Rando. Thank you.
Thank you, President Adrian, and good evening all. Before I kick off, I'd like to introduce Dr. Renzo More. He has over 15 years experience in sustainability, which is just amazing. And we look forward to hearing his adventure in working in both the academic and professional roles through not only just the big four consultancy firms, but a wide range within Australia and international organisations. Dr. Renzo does hold a PhD at the Australian Centre of Sustainability Business of University of Southern Queensland. Nice and warm up there. And also Renzo has worked as a research fellow as well for the Centre for Social Responsibility in Mining at the University of Queensland, conducting research on different topics, including accountability, sustainability and governance. Without further ado, Dr. Renzo More will be speaking this evening on the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals for SDGs. Please give him a warm welcome.
Hey everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm honored to be part of this meeting and talk a little bit more about the Sustainable Development Goals. All right, thanks for the introduction. I'm Renzo. I'm part of, at the moment, I'm part of the team at the university, RMIT University, working with the Sustainable Development Goals. RMIT has public commitments to implement the Sustainable Development Goals agenda across the university, and I'm part of the team. I would like to pay my respects. Thanks for the acknowledgement of the country. I would like to also pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. And I respectfully recognize elders past, present, and future. So I will start if you can go to the next slide, please. I'll be talking today about the Sustainable Development Goals. Just before I start talking, just to have an idea, who here is familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, have heard about it, saw it? Oh, that's great. Good, that's good. So I will start here in this slide. I just would like to provide a quick overview about the journey when we're talking about the global sustainability movement, especially the United Nations. The United Nations has been working with this global agenda for sustainable development for many, many years, and everything is started. There are a lot of main achievements through the years, but here I would like to highlight some of them. And the first one you can see there is the first report that was published by the Club of Rome in Europe. And it was the first time that a group of international academics, government representatives, they were together and they said, the way we're living is not sustainable. We have to change. The way we produce our production and our consumption is not going very well. If we continue this way, we will not have a planet anymore. That was in 1972, 50 years ago. And then 1987, the Brundtland Report. In this report, it was exactly again commissioned by the United Nations with experts from different parts of the world, governments, industries involved, and they come up with this report again, reaffirm that the way we live is not sustainable, we need to change. And that specific report was the first time that the concept of sustainable development was said, and the same concept that we use today. Another big milestone in '92, the Rio, that was a summit, again, all members of the United Nations sitting together, looking at the previous reports and said, yes, we have to do something. It's not sustainable the way we're living, right? As a result of this summit, the 21 agenda came through. And it's basically an initial roadmap for governments to start implementing actions to improve sustainability performance. When I'm talking here about sustainability, it's about the traditional concept, right? So we have the economic side, we have the social side, and you have the environment side. Then in 2000, the United Nations developed the Millennium Goals. That was the first time that we actually have specific goals in place that were signed by each one of the members of the United Nations. You can see the 8 goals here. Again, looking at the traditional way of sustainability, economic, social, and environment side. In 2020, the Millennium Goals was an agenda for 15 years. So they were designed in 2020, and it's an agenda with some of targets for 2015. In 2012 was a review of the process that is known as the Rio 20 plus, 20 years after first meeting in Rio in 1992. And it was a reassessment of everything that was done in the past, including the Millennium Goals. As a result of this report, there was a discussion about the continuity of the Millennium Goals. And in 2016, the Sustainable Development Goals was signed by each one of the members of the United Nations. If you can go to the next slide, please. And what is new about this new approach the United Nations is using is, basically, there was a huge consultation process. As you saw in that journey, there were a lot of processes happening in the past. So it's a kind of evolution of the sustainability frameworks and different governance approach the United Nations was developing and implementing together with the United Nations member countries. They were adopted in 2015, and they came into effect in 2016. And they are composed by 17 goals. And this is the one of, if we can say, improvement of the Millennium Goals. The SDGs, they have specific targets and indicators under each one of the 17 goals, clearly mentioning what we mean about sustainability. What are clear aspects we have to improve when we're talking about poverty? What are the clear topics we have to improve when we're talking about gender equality? And the principles as well. The SDGs came with specific principles. For example, circularity, left no one behind. Circularity goes to the environment side, environment footprint. Left no one behind is about the social side of it. And something new about the SDGs is, remember that traditional approach for sustainability I mentioned before, economic, social, and environment? The SDGs brought new components. So there is a SDG specific talking about governance and peaceful societies, which means if we are not in harmony, we cannot improve as human beings, and we cannot improve our sustainability performance. Another important component that was brought by the SDGs is the concept of collaboration and partnerships, which means without collaboration, without partnerships, we cannot achieve the level of sustainability we need. Next slide, please. And here you have the 17 goals. So you have goals addressing the social side of sustainability, for example, no poverty, zero hunger, gender equality. You have specific SDGs talking about the environment side of sustainability, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, climate action. And we have the one I told you about governance, which is the number 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. And 17, partnerships and collaboration. Again, is a recognition that we have to develop partnerships to improve our sustainability outcomes. Next slide, please. And here, just to give an example. So remember I said each one of the SDGs, they have a specific set of targets and indicators. Here, I'm just providing a specific example. What does it mean, like indicators and targets? So under the SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, one of the targets we have is by 2030, increase the share of renewable energy in a global energy mix. So it's basically a specific topic. This is the direction we have to go to address affordable and clean energy. And what is more relevant about the SDGs is the indicators I told you. There are specific indicators clearly mentioning what should be done and how I'm going to measure success. An example here is the 7.2.1. So each one of the targets, they have a specific metric, at least one. Some of them, they have more than one. In this case, renewable energy share in the total energy consumption. So this is the way we'll be measuring if we are achieving that specific target of that specific indicator. If you can go to the next slide, please, another example in relation to SDG 16. So there is one target which is about non-discriminatory laws and policies. And how they are measuring this? Proportion of population reporting having personally felt discriminated against or harassed. For example, here in Australia, ABS collect this type of data. So this is another example where we have this global agenda with specific goals, targets, and indicators. Some discussions around, are the SDGs perfect? Are the goals, targets, and indicators perfect? They are not. But if you think about a global agenda that every country in the world accepted, this is remarkable. It's the first time in history that we actually have this global agenda signed by each one of the countries, member of the United Nations, with specific goals and targets. So this is such achievement for us. We should be proud of what we have. If you can go to the next slide, please. So the SDGs, as I said, they were signed by the United Nations members, right? So each country has their own responsibility to implement the Sustainable Development Agenda. The Sustainable Development Goal is also known as the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Why? Because lots of targets and indicators, they have that specific timeline, 2030. The same way the Millennial Goals, they had the 15 years, 2000 to 2015. The SDGs have the agenda, 2030. So lots of targets for 2030. And this is why we see, for example, there are a lot of organizations, for example, with targets to become carbon neutral by 2030. The 2030 is because of the SDGs agenda and targets. So I was telling, although the government, the federal government, is responsible for the SDGs, the Australian Prime Minister was the one signed for the SDGs, it's everyone's responsibility. So we have at the moment, we have governments working, you have the federal government, we have state government, we have local governments working with the SDGs agenda, we have companies working with the SDGs agenda, we have non-for-profit sector working with SDGs agenda, we have lots of examples there. For example, Salvation Army is using the SDGs, applying the SDGs lens as a sustainability framework. If you go to the next slide, I just include a couple of examples there. So here, the federal government, if you see, there is a report called Report on the Implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals from 2018. This is a voluntary report that the Australian government published in 2018. Every country member of the United Nations, as I said, they signed for the SDGs. So they have a commitment to publish voluntary reports like this one here, which is a kind of accountability process to demonstrate what the country is doing to implement the Sustainable Development Goals agenda. That could be done every year. That could be done every 2 years. And we have countries that have reported only once. Australia, unfortunately, is one of those countries that have reported only one. And we have countries reporting 4 or 5 times already. Here in the top, in the left bottom side, this is the Melbourne, the city of Melbourne. City of Melbourne is doing a great work for many, many years. Again, applying the SDGs lens for transformational change. And this is the latest reports they have public available. More examples. DELP here in Victoria has its own SDGs strategy. Here I include West Farmers. They have SDGs as part of their sustainability strategy as well. And here RMIT. This is one of our reports. This is an annual report about RMIT's contributions to the SDGs. And what we see is, as I said, it's a global agenda. And some of the benefits of organizations in applying the SDGs is because it's not about that specific organization. It's not about that specific person working with sustainability, talking that gender equality is something important, telling that climate change is something important. That's a global agenda. As I said, we had a lot of people thinking behind this framework, and they come up with very important topics. So when you link your work as organization, as non-for-profit, when you link your work with the SDGs, you're actually looking at these global main challenges we're facing in society. And that's a common language that you can address. Oh, I'm working with gender. That's a common language, SDG 5. Oh, I'm working with circularity, waste management, that's SDG 12. So that brings credibility to discuss relevant topics, as well as the alignment with this global agenda. It's a common language. If you can go to the next slide, please. And here is, if there is the United Nations, as I said, they have a long journey work with this global sustainability agenda. And something they started with the SDGs, and I think it's a very positive topic, is the accountability and transparency of the process. So what they are trying to do here is increase awareness, society awareness, consumers awareness, students awareness through transparency. And what happened here, I'm showing two reports. Those are annual reports. One is provided by the United Nations. The second one is provided by the Sustainable Development Solutions Network in partnership with Cambridge University. They are independent reports that are assessing each one of the countries' performance in relation to the SDGs. So for example, if you want to know now if Australia, the way Australia is performing against some of the targets that I said under the SDG 13 climate change, you have this information publicly available. And what the United Nations has, the strategy the United Nations has behind it is to increase awareness. Once you have a society more aware about sustainability, that society will start pressuring governments to act. That society will start considering sustainability topics in the decision-making process. If I'm buying something on the market, or if I have a partnership with an entity, I'm looking to these topics in my decision-making process. And that helps to move towards the right direction. So those two reports, they come every year. As I said, there are a lot of public information. You can see every detail, everything is public available. And if you can go to the next slide, I would just like to talk about some of the findings. So this one here is basically, as I said, they assess each one of the countries individually, and they have the global index, which is basically measuring if we are going the right direction, if we are implementing the goals. And what you can see here, they start measuring in 2010, and the last update was in 2021. If you can see in the end, we are kind of stagnated. So in the last 2 years, we were stagnated. And there are a lot of reasons. If you can go to the next slide, some of the reasons I think you might be aware of. So COVID had a huge impact. And also some of the security crises that we unfortunately are seeing more and more often. And here we're not considering Ukraine situation because Ukraine happened in 2022. So we're just looking here in 2021 data. And what happened is, we cannot say that, it's all problem. COVID had a negative impact in some of the SDGs, but we still progress in others. So in the end of the day, we kind of stagnated. We are stagnated in achievement of the SDGs in the last 2 years. But if you see the history, if you see the data there, you can see that we were advancing pretty well, like 0.5, if I'm not wrong, 0.5 points per year, specifically in poor and developing countries, where there is a huge gap and also an opportunity. I'm talking gap, but there is also an opportunity to improve sustainability performance. And some of the SDGs that were impacted negatively, SDG 1, poverty, SDG 8, which is about production, economic growth, and of course, SDG 3, which is about health and well-being. If you can go to the next slide, I'm providing some examples of what happened. So this is, again, is part of those reports. You have a lot of information in there. I'm just trying to highlight some examples so people are there when I see that things are not going well, where they're not going well. So for example, emissions, that was the highest level we ever had in our history. That was last year, and it was increased 6% comparing to 2020. Number of refugees increasing a lot as well. As I said, a lot of conflicts. Inflation, there is a direct economic impact on poverty and economic growth. Here, the 4 years of progress against poverty. So those are some of the issues that, unfortunately, we went backwards. But let's be positive. Can you go to the next slide? There are positives. So, for example, in relation to basic drinking water, we continue to improve, up right in the corner. If you see gender, we are improving some aspects. This is one of the metrics. Women share in national parliament. So there are some progress. We have chalky knowledge progress. There are a lot of issues that we have to improve, but also it's important to understand that we are achieving progress in some areas. Here in the bottom is another indicator, which is about the infrastructure of schools. And there was also some improvements there. I didn't bring a lot of data. As I said, there are a lot of data sitting behind those informations. If anyone wants to know more, you have a deep dive into one of the topics. There are a lot of information available. But just to give an overview about where we're doing well and where we're not doing well. If you can go to the next slide, please. And let's talk about Australia. So here in the table, this is the ranking, there's this ranking, right? So you see the top 20 in there, the Scandinavians countries doing well, no surprise. And here you can see, again, everything is public available. You can see the whole list there. But I would like to bring in Australia here. So Australia was 35 last year. This year we were ranked 38. And if you see the score, it's pretty much the same, 75.6, 75.6. So it's not that we are not progressing or getting back. It's actually the other countries are improving faster than us. If you can go to the next slides, just show more detail. So this is exactly one of the dashboards that's public available. And you have everything sitting behind each one of them. So remember, this is a 2030 agenda. So being honest, would be really hard to have all the goals achieved by 2030. No hunger, no poverty. So the way the ranking works is towards improvement as well. So this is what you see, details here in the bottom. It's important to see if you see the colors and you see the arrows. So when you see the arrow going up, it seems that there are improvements happening, but it's likely that they will not be enough to achieve the goals we have for 2030. And here, Australia, you see like the red ones, which is major challenges, zero hunger. Something that sits behind the zero hunger component is obesity as well. So this is one of the indicators that Australia doesn't go well. SDG 12, it's about responsible production and consumption. Australia, as a developed country, we generate a lot of waste. And unfortunately, we don't have very, very high levels of recycling. Circular economy is something very, very strong. Here, we have a lot of investment in policies. We see the national government, the federal government, the state government, local government doing a lot of work in that space. But this is something that takes time. It's not something that you implement now and you see the results. It's something that takes time, but it's advancing very well. Climate change. Australia was always, if you see, I didn't mention about it, but when you see the rankings over there, Australia comparing to the OECD countries and developed countries, Australia is not doing very, very well. Actually, in the ranking, when you see 37, we have a lot of developing economies ahead of Australia as a developed country. So there are some pressures, some pressure on Australia to do a better job as a developed country. So the 13 is about climate action, right? Our energy, we still burn a lot of coal, but there is a good sign now from the federal government, a new commitment to reduce emissions. There is a specific plan to become carbon neutral by 2050 and to reduce significantly our emissions by 2030. That is just happening at the moment, which is great. In 15, which is about biodiversity. We have a huge problem in Australia with the loss of biodiversity for different reasons, because the ecosystem here is a very fragile ecosystem. As an island, we have a lot of feral and invasive species that are affecting the ecosystem, as well as the degradation of the environment. Deforestation is a big issue here in Australia. We tend to think about, oh, deforestation, that's an Amazon thing, that's an Indonesian thing. We have deforestation problem here in Australia. And this is demonstrated we have problems with biodiversity. So that's the SDG 15. So just to give you an idea where we are performing, and again, everything is public available. We have a lot of information there. And I think we have to start exercise our citizenship better, all of us, I include myself. We have a lot of information out there, and I think we have to start asking questions. When we, if you go to buy a t-shirt and they sell a t-shirt for $1, so come on, how can you say you can sell a t-shirt by $1? You start asking the question. They might have a good reason. They have a lot of stock they want to get rid of, but ask the questions. Most of the organizations now, I'm talking about businesses, I'm talking about local governments, not-for-profits, everyone, they have a lot of communication channels. Everyone, most of the organizations are talking about sustainability. We did a research some time ago, actually last year, with the top 150 listed companies in Australia, just to see the approach for sustainability reporting. And the huge majority of organizations already have sustainability reporting processes in place. So they have a sustainability team, they have a sustainability channel, communication channel in place. And I think it's good for us to start making this citizenship exercise a little bit stronger, asking the questions and talking now wearing the sustainability hat professional hat. I think this is great because it's not for example, in my case, within our MIT, when we have students asking things for us, sending email to us, oh, I know you have done partnership with this company. I don't know if this company is a good company or is a mining. What's your responsible investment strategy? Have you been financing, providing scholarships? This information is really good because it gives us additional power. It's not ourselves, the sustainability team, trying to drive the sustainability agenda. It's actually our stakeholders asking the question, and that helps a lot. So that's a lesson for all of us. Start asking questions. Send email, connections, call if you have any doubts, if you want to know about the sustainability performance for a specific company or organization, start asking the questions. That helps a lot to improve. If you can go to the next slide, please. So about the two reports I was talking about, the annual reports the United Nations provide. This is some of the findings from the last year. So the first one, of course, peace, diplomacy, and international collaboration. More than ever, unfortunately, we're talking about a war. Nowadays, you know, where is the diplomacy? Where we fail to, we still have to improve. There are a lot of work that we have to improve. And unfortunately, in some of them, we're going backwards. Global plan to finance the SDGs. So SDGs is a broad agenda, right? It's a big commitment. And when we're talking about developed countries, it's a bit easier because not only because you developed and you have more wealth, but because you have governance structures in place, you have good policies in place, you have data in place, you have systems in place to help in decision-making process. When we're talking about developing countries, poor countries, sometimes they lack governance structure, which helps to improve, implement the actions on the ground. The lack of wealth, the data, even the data. If you're asking some of the poor countries, they're struggling to implement actions to address poverty, very big issues, access to water, energy. And you start asking them, oh, you have to start monitoring the data. I want you to provide me data about the number of people starving in your country. When you're struggling to achieve those basic issues, you cannot ask them the same way you ask in developed countries. So this is where the United Nations is working to start financing the SDGs. How can we start shifting and providing more support in a fair ground for developing and poor countries to be able to keep up with this framework, to implement this framework and have improvements on the ground? Again, if you look at the way countries are addressing the SDGs, we have countries, you know, very proactive, doing a lot of work, align national strategies with local strategies, That is a term we use, localization of the SDGs, which is actually you translating the SDGs agenda to the local context. So there are countries doing a huge work, great work. There are countries that, yeah, good, I signed it. Yeah, I'll do it, but not actually implementing, not changing on the ground. So there is a huge difference in the way countries are working. And I'm talking broadly, developed, developing, and poor countries. Rich countries generate negative international spillovers. This is something really, really nice that was incorporated just in the last 2 years, which is basically, for example, let's talk here in Australia. We export a lot of coal, right? So this coal is going to be burned somewhere. So that will become emission. We not count that emission. Actually, we will not count that emission as Australian emission because Indonesia bought it and Indonesia is burning. So Indonesia is providing a number of CO2 they are sending to the atmosphere. But now with this spillover, the United Nations is actually saying, oh, wait a minute, where this coal is coming from? Oh, Australia. So that's your problem. You're part of the problem. Another example is pesticides. Besides, there is a huge negative impact on biodiversity, and you have a lot of countries exporting a lot of pesticides across the world. Norway export a lot of oil. You see, Norway is in the top, one of the top, I think is the second if I'm not wrong, but they have a huge impact in the spillover side because they're exporting a lot of oil. They have a lot of wealth coming from the oil they export. So I think this was something really nice the United Nations has done, which is bringing to the attention those topics that was usually forgotten. You just see where the problem exists at the moment, but you don't see what has been causing it, where the supply chain started. And the COVID, of course, affected a lot. So we didn't recover fully on the COVID. We had a lot of, as we said, in the last 2 years, we actually stagnated because we had a lot of SDGs that we went backwards because of the whole COVID situation. But the COVID also demonstrated that there are a lot of opportunities for us to collaborate. We saw a lot of collaboration among countries. Everybody working together because there was this common problem and there was no way out. We had to work together and it worked very well. And it demonstrated that could be done. There are opportunities for collaboration. There are opportunities to have better partnerships. If you can go to the next slide, please. Now I'll talk a little bit about the university. If you can go to the next slide, please. I'll talk a little bit about the university side as a representative of the university. What role universities can play? Soon we will see the slides there. Maybe not. Yeah, if you can go to the next slide. So universities can play a very important role in this sustainable development agenda. And when we're talking about sustainability and SDGs, universities play a very, very important role in 4 main areas. The first one is research. So you're developing research that will improve sustainability performance. You have research actually bringing innovation to sustainability, new technologies, innovation broadly. You improve the knowledge you use to improve sustainability performance. We had an opportunity to talk about applied research. So we have lots of examples of applied research, applying the knowledge on the ground for a common benefit. That's the research component. The second one is the education. Whether we incorporate in sustainable development, sustainability as part of our curriculum. And nowadays, you might agree with me, doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what you're studying, doesn't matter the sector you are, sustainability is there. Or as a risk that you have to manage, or opportunity you can improve, you can use that opportunity to have a better business, to access to new markets, to do something better, or a bit of both. Operations and governance. So this is basically the way universities, if universities are walking the talk. So for example, at MIT, we have a lot of work done in that space. For example, the sustainability team does a lot of work in our environment footprint, reducing emissions, energy, recycle waste, generating less waste, water reuse. That is the diversity and inclusion team doing a lot of work with both our staff, students, and the community as well. So that's the operations and governance. For example, having a sustainability committee in place, have sustainability embedded as part of the university strategy. And the external leadership, which is basically where the universities are using all the capabilities, all the resources to drive change, to influence its stakeholders to be more sustainable. So that's the big picture of the role universities can play when we're talking about sustainability and SDGs. If you can go to the next slide, please. I'll talk a little bit more. Time good? If you have some time. Oh, thank you. So talking specifically about RMIT. So RMIT has been working with sustainability for many, many years. We have our environment policy back then in '94. We have a sustainability policy that was published in 2012. And in 2017, we became officially signatories of the Sustainable Development Goals Agenda. We were the first group of universities in Australia to actually have this public commitment to not only implement the Sustainable Development Goals Agenda across those 4 big areas I told you, but actually supporting the agenda and being accountable about the agenda. Because one thing is, oh yeah, we have commitment. Oh yeah, SDGs. I have a lot of SDG tiles, colorful, they're beautiful, right? Everywhere. The other thing is actually doing work on the ground and you demonstrate and being accountable about the work you're doing. So this is some of the commitments we have that was done in 2017. And so far we have been implementing the SDGs agenda. If you can go to the next slide, please. So this is what we're doing. We have we call RMIT-wide SDGs project. So basically, we're using the SDGs, we apply the SDGs lens to improve our sustainability performance and achieve what we call transformational change. So and this concept, we have 2 levels of engagement with the SDGs, right? So the first one is what we call you link an activity you already have, a program or initiative you already have with SDG contribution. So for example, if we have a scholarship for low social income students, we link with the SDG 10. We try to reduce inequality. We try to reduce poverty. The second level of engagement, this is where we are at the moment, is actually how can I look to the SDGs framework? How can I look to the SDGs principles and actually apply and change? How can I look at the SDGs and do things in a different way? Go beyond the business as usual. And this is where we are at the moment. It's a challenge. It's not easy. You know, it's easy for me here to talk about it, but it's really hard to implement. But I'm very glad to be with RMIT because we're trying to do it. There is a high level commitment. There is a lot of bottom-up approach, a lot of initiatives happening on the ground. So it's good to see that we know the challenge, we know that we have to improve, but we're trying to go in that path. And this is the 4 areas this project has. So raising awareness, trying to increase awareness across the university about SDGs. We have people work with the SDGs sustainability and they know about it, but there is a huge number of people out there. They might be work with sustainability topic, might be work with one of the SDGs there, but they don't know about it. They are not familiar about it. So it's our work to engage these people, to increase their awareness and capacity building as well. The second one is about capabilities, understanding where our capabilities are. So the SDGs, I told you, it's a common framework. It helps a lot because it's a common language. So we started doing a lot of mapping exercise to see, for example, what kind of research we have for each one of the SDGs. And it was great because one, as I said, we wanted to be accountable. So we reported this type of information in our annual reports, but it was also really good to try to foster collaboration. We have situations, RMIT is such a huge university. We have 3 colleges. We have a lot of people in there, a lot of academics and researchers working in different research. So it's really hard to know everyone, right? So when we use the SDGs, it was great because we saw situations where we had actually different group of research working the same topic in the same sector, in the same region, and they didn't know about each other. So it was a good exercise to see where our capabilities are and try to foster collaboration, link the dots. And that leads to the collaboration opportunities. We have a lot of initiatives try to foster multidisciplinary research, for example, interdisciplinary research, and measuring reporting. That's the accountability component I told you. RMIT is not because I said we signed the SDGs in 2017, but for example, we have been publishing annual reports since 2015. So it's a accountability exercise. If you go to the next slide, please, we almost finishing here. And this is just an example. This is from our 2021 report. Just to give an idea about our impact. So in 2021, we had 1,107 active courses linked to the SDGs. We had 2,451 academic publication contributed to the SDGs, and more than 1,100 research projects contributing to the SDGs. I think my time is up. If you can just finish with the last slide. This is basically references. If you want to know more, those are the references for the reports. I extract some of the information here if you want to have a look, as well as RMIT website, and here in my email. I'm happy to connect anytime. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dr. Renzo, around the goals of today. So clubs like ours in Rotary Melbourne and other non-for-profits, how do they feel the mix in terms of what capability they can provide in terms of first partnerships, and then two, the impact that club will make to those overall goals?
Yeah, I think like a good
from experience.
initial exercise
Yes.
would be, for example, partnerships. Start asking for your business partners, for your partners, do you know about the SDGs agenda? Are you working with the SDGs agenda? Are you interested to start working with the SDGs agenda? And in the worst case scenario, at least you make someone new to know about the SDGs. If they're applying the SDGs or not, it's okay.
So is it more about awareness? Dr.
Exactly.
Renzo?
Awareness is the first step. If you have knowledge about something, at least, SDGs, poverty, gender, and that leads to the impact. The SDGs helps a lot to measure impact. As I said, it's a global agenda. It's not you and me saying, oh, it's important for you to measure this and that. It's a global agenda. There are a lot of indicators already there that you can link up with projects and initiatives. The initiative you mentioned about the volunteering work happening on the night. Yeah, that's a good way. Like, for example, you can use, and I'm happy to do it, to help you guys. Like, if you want to link up initiatives and work you already have with the SDGs contributions, that could be easily done because the indicators are already there. So you can start linking up, and that helps a lot with awareness and bringing people on board for a common goal.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
Do we have any more questions in the room for Dr. Renzo before we hand back over? Peter.
My question is sort of around the fact that we are Australians in the G20, goals, the G20 summits and meetings, and here we are sitting at 195. And it seems to me that we should be sitting at least in the top 20 as far as the SDGs. But having had sort of a recent election campaign, I don't know whether it's in the policy platforms of the major parties that they start to educate and actually have these SDGs as part of their platform policy to actually do something to elevate Australia in a higher rate and to be much more responsible. So is that something that sort of lobbying groups like the universities and other organisations are working their way with government, both at the state and federal level, to actually get that out of the arena into the public domain in this community, so that we all become much more socially aware?
Yeah. I think it's a bit of both. You have organizations doing amazing work far ahead of the government and the policy that we have in place. We have, for example, states doing amazing, like Melbourne City is a great example. The work that's happening here, it's a global best practice and far ahead of the national policy. And when we're talking about organizations, industry, we have an industry doing very, very well. We have industries not doing very well. You see, for example, the mining is still a powerful group here. But on the other hand, we're talking about electrical vehicles, right? We need battery. Where the battery come from? So I think it's about having those clear discussions. We tend to criticize mining, no mining, no mining, no mining, but at the same time, we have mobile phones. Where the minerals come from? So it's about having this transparency in on the talk. What are the challenges that we are facing as a society? And how can we start addressing these challenges? And I think back to the citizenship exercise I mentioned before, we have to start asking the questions, because if not asking the questions, things will continue the way it is, and we have to improve. And I think, for example, the results of the ranking, this is a great instrument you're talking about in bringing the results, because this is not ourselves talking about it. Like there is a full body of people, the United Nations, diving data, providing results that are there. You cannot, what are you going to say about the data? You're going to say that the whole world is measuring wrongly some of the data. So you have to see what's actually happening, be transparent about the challenge. There are a lot of challenges. You know, sustainability is such a big issue. There are a lot of things that we still have to find out. How can we address those issues? We see with green energy, the technology is advancing a lot. There is a recent study that was just published in the UK this week, demonstrates that we actually losing money if we not migrate to green energy. The sooner we do it, more money we'll save. So there are a lot of new research coming every time with new findings, new technology advancing. So I think it's an exercise for us to just start asking the questions, making, you know, our voices is raised. And yeah.
Thank you. We might just now hand over, I'll get you stand up here just for the vote of thanks, and I'll hand it back to the same. Thank you.
Dr. Renzo More, I'd like to thank you with a little gift from us.
Thank you very much.
They're socks. I'll say this. They are socks that are provided by our past president, Phil Indersby, and his company, Wilderness Wear. So I hope.
Oh, thank you very much.
They
I
are
was not
200%.
expecting at all.
They are 200% Australian. So just be very clear on that. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you
once
very
again.
much. Thank you.